So now the focus of game studies is basically you, the player, the game, and then what's around it is the contextual frames. Remember the last slides that I showed you in the video when we went live, and I told you that there's several things that you got to understand in terms of the post-structural views of society and reality, understanding reality and simulated reality, you know, this sort of thing. Now the contextual frames is basically representing reality, so in context. So how do you, everybody's reality is different, and you can create realities, and you can also personify realities and to represent a specific journey, to represent a concept. So the game here is like a challenge where you actually see reality as a form of a game-like environment. So the focus of game studies is for you to understand the dynamic between your interaction between the game world and yourself. So this is important when you're actually going to work with your game studies e-portfolio, where when you actually do specific exercises, which I will show you one specific directional exercise that you're going to do at the end of this slides, that you're going to have to map things out for yourself. So now the understanding of research in game studies is for you to understand this world, understand your the dynamic connection between you and the game world. But as I said last time, you are the user, so understanding the user point of view of the game world is very, very crucial, so you can use yourself as a form of a case study by yourself. How's the screen like? Okay, good. Okay, cool. So now so in terms of games, there's the diversity of games, as mentioned before, is not exactly so limited. It's unlimited. There's just so much today. There's Grand Theft Auto, Solitaire, Dungeons and Dragons, Go, you know, from traditional games to high-end digital games. Sorry, but not Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto 5 or 6 or 7, you know, as you go on, every one of these games simulate reality for some reason, or one part of the game may simulate reality, but that's for you to make sense of. But here, diversity of games is looking at the different kind of interaction, immersion into the environment, the game environment. But not all have exactly the same concept. Concepts can differ, then game dynamics, game mechanics can actually differ. But in the end, if you step back and look at the larger picture, many of the challenges you see in games can mirror your own challenges, can mirror human challenges, specific aspects of life itself. Now, the academic study of games have already started since the past, I would say, the past 30-40 years or so. But analyzing game strategies has always been there ever since, you know, when battles take place during world wars and all that. So strategies started to take place since then. Every time since early history of civilization, humans, generals, businessmen, you know, who want to achieve something, who want to reach a milestone in a business venture or war or battle plans, anything like that. Even if it's construction or any area of discipline, there is a sense of wanting to achieve a specific milestone. It's almost like you need to level up and then try to reach a certain point, you know. So academic work is based on very much analyzing what happens, what is really happening, and game playing. Those days used to be seen as opposite, because why? Because the in those early years, in early part of history, the game, quote unquote, is actually reality, because you're already doing it. You're already fighting that war, fighting the battle. You're rebuilding civilization and etc. So you are doing it first person, first hand. There's no digital technology. They don't have the technology to look at life from a third person point of view, from first person point of view. You're unable to do this sort of thing. You're unable to simulate, create some kind of simulation. The only thing that's well simulated is like theater, art, craft, board games, etc. So they're often seen as opposites, but it doesn't necessarily mean the case those days. But at some point, academic work and game playing have been seen as opposites. So, but they do share a lot in common. Now, game playing has always traditionally been involving creating, testing, revising strategies, just like what you guys are doing. When you are playing, you guys, the reason why you're taking game studies, because you wanted to know whether it's possible to analyze and create and test strategies. Now, strategies can be gameplay patterns, can be frameworks of playing, can be, whatever you want to call it, but these are basically generally strategies. It's a very big word. Okay, so now one of the success in academic studies very much involves building theories or theorizing. Now, first things first, you're going to have to identify things in specific problem statements in games. Now, when you play games, you got to first find out what is about that game, or what is the nature of that game, or the style of the design of the game that you want to focus on. You got to find a specific problem statement. What is going on with this whole thing called the whatever game it is. So these are challenging, because you're gonna have to play the games many times, just like how people play beta versions. So they will understand what the issues concerning the gameplay, concerning various factors about the game. Now, you should go online and look up histories of games, histories of game studies and etc. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but it's a very, very huge subject. But what we are focusing for this module is the analysis of digital games, and mainly digital games. Now that during the MCO period, digital games is going to be the highlight, but it's also the digital version of manual games. That's why we all are going to use Tabletop Simulator. Now, the reason why we're going to use Tabletop Simulator is because when you create a tabletop game, you are doing something that you can't do in creating digital games. In creating digital games, half your effort is going to be about coding. But what creation of digital games and manual games have in common is that you both are involved in creating strategies. And that's the interesting thing that we want to see theorized from you. Okay, you guys are going to come up with those theoretical concepts or frameworks. And origins, there are tons of origins, way back history. This is like going way back, and there are presentations, there are academic journals which was set up to actually publish studies about this. Okay, like for example, the National Gaming Council, North American Simulation Gaming Association. I don't think we have such association in Malaysia just yet, but and so on. So Simulation Gaming Journal was established, and today we have a Game Studies Journal as well, international journal. So conduct some studies on that. I'm going to show you the Game Studies Journal shortly. Then last week we talked about ludology and narratology. Okay, Gonzalo Frasca basically proposed ludology as a concept to refer to yet non-existent discipline that studies game and gameplay. Ludology is not technically a discipline. Ludology is just a term based from the word ludus, and it's a term that signifies a play mechanic without heavy narrations. Without heavy narratives. That is not heavily dependent on story-driven framework. So there is an online peer-reviewed journal, okay, and Digital Games Research Association, based in 2003. So some of these now you notice that online peer-reviewed journal for game studies, which was established 2001, and there's also like for example Digital Game Research Association 2003. These conferences like this is becoming more frequent. Now a lot, they're not, some of these conferences are not so eccentrically focused on just purely the game studies or purely digital games. They are already infused in various disciplines. For example, the gamification of education, gamifying this, gamified versions of this, and educational games or business games or simulations of this simulation, that simulation, and so on and so forth. So a lot of conferences are looking at a lot of cutting edge new theories, concepts of games, which actually can benefit the various varied disciplines, because today you see that industry is beginning to understand the potentials of using gamified mechanisms into various disciplines. So, and it is very productive and has got a lot of response from their customers and their target audience. So why is it the case? Now that why is the case is based on the purest view of the understanding of games, ludology and narratology. So what is it? What is it? The early debate centered on whether the main focus on academic study of games should be on games, storytelling, or interactive potential. Now, there's no right or wrong views here. It's just your point of view or perspective. The key here is for you guys to do a little bit of referencing, choose your path. Now, if you see certain games and you really have been curious and your aim is to ultimately design a game which you're going to develop post your graduation or post-grad level or later on in the industry with a team of people, then you can start now, because this takes years to do. Because your perspective on this very much depends on your exploration on the games that you like, that you feel is beneficial for what? For question mark, beneficial for a certain target audience, or what is it? So this sense of identity is not exactly fixed. It is based on decision, your decision. So this is some of the references. Okay, I will put this PDF in Times so you can have a look at it. Now this assignment, okay, is more like getting yourself started in like a more formal, not say formal, it's more like an assignment basically. Yeah, it's just a task. Now construct a map of your personal history among games and play. How's that? Have you done this before? Hello, are you guys there? Okay. Yeah. So, basically what you need to do is write a text where you describe your personal relation to games and playing. Highlight key phases or an account trying to explain your relation to games. And we can talk about this. So it's a very simple exercise. Map out your personal history among games and play. Like for example, create a historical account, historical chronology concerning your games. Right. So basically you just have to write a short text. Doesn't matter how much you write basically and describe, but you don't have to write text. You can just draw a diagram, draw some kind of diagram, some kind of tree or whatever, that what games have you ever first played, and what games, and try to make some connection like a tree. Put your game history in the form of a tree, and as an introduction to yourself, your personal gameplay history, whatever you want to call it, something like that. Don't call it personal game history. Call it something. Personalize it. You can choose tree, you can choose a fishbone, whatever diagram that you like. You can just create one and put that in your exercise. Put that as an exercise. Let's just call it exercise 1. Okay, so just put exercise 1 and put that in your e-portfolio. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's basically it. So I'm just going to say this just to summarize. The focus, just summarize, just remember this diagram, okay? The focus of game studies. The focus of game studies is you, the game, and the contextual frames. So from now on, you're going to have to see it through a specific lens. You're no more just, you're not just playing a game, okay, and trying to make sense of the game. You're going to understand why the game was made in the first place. Who does it involved? Who's involved in it? What are these characters' archetypes? Are they representational? What about the environment? The music, the mood, everything. What is this really about? Okay. There's no specific format for that. Just do it yourself, however you like it. You're doing it digitally, just do it. Whatever you show me is your best practice. You see why I'm saying that is because is there one kind of game which is standardized version? No, right? There's never been a standardized game. I don't think so, because there are so many games are so diverse. As diverse as human beings. So you're going to have to create your own personal game history, personalize your game history, or call it a gameplay history, or I don't know how you want to call your personal game history, but it's a form of make it diagrammatic. It doesn't have to be all very text-based. Yeah, you can sketch it out, or you can, if you like to make your personal game history like a little video documentary of yourself, that's fine. That's totally cool. I'm cool with however you want to do it, but don't just make it text. Make it kind of visual. Yeah. If you want to write something, just write a little summary about it.
Okay. I think I might need some clarification. So
sure.
From what I understand,
yep,
you have to explain our game history, how we started playing games.
Yeah.
And then we list the games we play. Not everything, but most of the
yeah
our lives.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you list those games, because you see, when you as you grow up, the games that you play are different, right? Yeah. If it's same, it's fine. Just indicate it's the same. But then you have to make your own analysis. Why is it the same? So you reflect. Yeah, you're gonna have to discuss that. Have a personal discussion. In fact, you guys can talk among each other. It's like, why are the games different as you grow up? What was the turning point that made you want to play this part of game, this kind of game? Analyze that personal game history, that chronology. You can make this chronology. This chronology as some form of a reflection tool, but it's an analysis tool. So you have to probe yourself. See, one of the good thing about theorizing is, first, you need to do a lot of probing, a lot of searching, a lot of discovering, a lot of reflection. And as you do this, sometimes you may discover things which you didn't quite realize, because at some point, for example, like for myself, I remember let's focus on digital games. Now, one of the earliest digital games I've ever played was Ancient Art of War by Broderbund Software. And I remember that Ancient Art of War, Broderbund Software was in the early stage, came up with games which is monochrome, because they run on 8086 kind of IBM PC with the 5.25 inches floppy disk drive. You know, can you believe it? Yeah, so you have that monochrome screen, and what I love about Ancient Art of War is basically a war strategy game, and the graphics are very very crude at that time, almost pixelized kind of graphics, but there's text that meant, you know, and the excitement of heading into a territory and conquering your foes and things like that. So that's one of the very very first digital games I've ever played. And at some point, it just, I was very very young at that time. I was like, what, how old was I was like, the digital games came out. I was like, how old? This is a tricky one. Damn, I was very very young. I was like form 2, form 3, around there. Yeah, I was like 14 years old. So yeah, so that's the earliest thing, and those were the early days of the Macintosh computers too, and games were all very crude. And I remember when we were school, we used to have all this funny looking Pac-Man games as well, you know. Yeah, so those were just the age of discovery and exploration, but there were one or two games that fascinated me the most, that gave me a lot of power to do things which I can't do in real life. So that's how I analyze it. Then the next further games that I played, the what other games? So I got to reflect and do that. But one game that I could never forget, the turning point,